this isn't an X Shot blaster. So, for those of you who have not watched some of my older videos on TikTok, and I believe I've uploaded mirrors of them to YouTube as well, I am actually a pretty big fan of foam flinging. I especially like blasters that can shoot fast and shoot hard, which is why when the Dart Zone Max Striker came out, I knew that I had to get myself one, and oh boy was I blown away by the performance. You can see the videos where I go through some magazines and really test its power for the first time here on my YouTube channel if you scroll down far enough. Now, ever since Dart Zone came out with the Nexus Pro, they started a reign over the Nerf hobby when it came to blasters that you could pick up off the shelf and get pro performance out of the box without any modification. And of course, this makes sense. The Nexus Pro was the very first blaster where you could just go to a retail store and grab something that would actually cause people to call their hits rather than cheat and pretend they didn't feel anything. And this is how things continued for a while. Since 2020, I think was when the Nexus Pro came out, Dart Zone has captivated a lot of avid foam flingers, especially with the decline of the Nerf brand when they started releasing blasters in the Ultra and Hyper line. Although now that they've come out with Nerf Pro and the Strife X, which looks promising, it's just a little expensive, we may have another competitor in the ring. But before the Nerf Pro Strife X came out, when people were looking for a competitor to Dart Zone Pro that wasn't worker or game face with their blasters that you could only find online, we were graced with rumors about the X Shot Pro series. These are actually the iron sights off of my Dart Zone Pro Mark IV. We'll talk about that in a moment. So, when X Shot announced that they were going to come out with a Pro Series blaster that shoots half-length darts and takes half-length magazines, I was honestly rather surprised. Dart Zone was known as kind of a cheap off-brand until Dart Zone Pro hit the scene, but when Dart Zone Pro hit the scene, it was clear that Dart Zone was coming out swinging. And sure enough, I own a number of Dart Zone blasters, and I am quite happy with them all. I actually have, behind me in the other corner of the room, a Dart Zone Pro Mark IV that I've been working on modifying. Maybe there will be a video about that later on. But it's pretty hard to overstate how much of a dominance the Dart Zone brand had over the out-of-the-box pro performance market. Remember, up until the X Shot Pro Longshot came around, Dart Zone was the only brand where you could really see something like this on the shelves at your local Target or Walmart. And not only that, but with a Pro Longshot, it was clear that X Shot was also going to be hitting the ground running with this paint job that I think is actually incredible and is something quite unique to X Shot skins. I don't know of any other blaster line that has this amount of detailing in the paint. It was also a bullpup, which we haven't really seen very many pro performance bullpups except for the occasional community 3D printed blaster. And it has pump action slam fire and would be retailing for less than $40. The Dart Zone Max Dictator, which was already out at the time, had similar features. It had a unique rear loading mechanism where the dart actually faces vertically and a special mechanism flips it forward into the firing position, but it was a rear-loading blaster with pump-action slam fire, but this thing costed about $50. So if you're really tight on your budget and either you don't want to spend too much money or you're just dipping your toe into high-performance foam flinging, this seemed like it would be the new perfect option. And upon getting my hands on mine, I actually really liked how it felt. It was nice to shoulder it, especially with this extendable stock that is rather solid. The pump grip feels really nice. You know, it's reasonably accurate if you load the right darts into it. This barrel has rifling on the inside, but it's actually a little too wide for it to do anything for the accuracy of the dart. But it adds a lot of orange to the front, and it looks really cool. And this magazine release, which only drops the half-length magazine out without dropping out the adapter, was just genius. And of course, I deleted the full-length mag release here, but it can also take full-length magazines, and it comes with the necessary adapter to take half-length magazines, and this can take just about any half-length magazine on the market. It's not only compatible with its own X Shot Pro magazine, but also it can take Dart Zone Pro magazines, I believe, And it can also take worker Talon mags, which are some of the most popular out there right now. But this is where the X Shot Pro Longshot really starts to frustrate me, and this is where the compliments end. Because not too long after people started getting their hands on their X Shot Pro Longshots and modifying them and pushing them to higher numbers, or even people who were just playing with them stock, the reality of the trend of how X Shot has designed their blasters in the past came to strike the Longshot Pro as well. Look, do you see that? I actually don't know if you can see that. I haven't even fired 200 or maybe even 300 shots out of this thing, and you can't see it on the video, but when I checked, I was in shock and disbelief that my plunger tube was cracked. And this was a widespread issue that lots of people who bought their X Shot Longshots were reporting, to the point that metal plunger tubes are now available for sale on mod shops like Out of Darts. And the thing that frustrates me about all these plunger tubes breaking is that when I noticed a couple of other things about the way this blaster was designed, I really should have seen it coming. I talked earlier about how these iron sights are actually the stock iron sights that came with my Dart Zone Pro Mark IV. That's because the iron sights that come on this blaster are absolute garbage. The front sight has this little wheel on it for adjustable elevation, which is cool. But when you slide this on to the Picatinny rail on top of the blaster, I can take one finger. That is just not a solid hold on the rail. Whereas if you look at the stock irons that came on the Dart Zone Max Dictator, with one finger, sure, it's still a little easy to push around, but there is a pretty confirming click because the detent on the bottom of the iron sight actually has a little bit of a spring resistance to it, and I can feel a lot more friction when I slide this sight back and forth. So even if the detent doesn't catch, I can be pretty confident that even through some fairly rigorous use, this iron sight is not just gonna slide and fall off at any moment. And the problems I have with this blaster don't end there. Let's talk about the darts. With the launch of the X Shot Pro line, X Shot also announced their X Shot Pro Dart, which actually looks pretty promising at first. You know, it's got a fairly standard dart head design. It's the length of the standard half length. The foam is pretty stiff, so you would expect it to be durable. But the first issue I take with this dart is look at this. This is an X Shot Pro half-length dart, and this released somewhere between like a year to a year and a half before the Longshot is a Dart Zone Max Ruby dart. Look at them from a distance like this and tell me you can see a difference between the two of them. Because you can't. The colors of these two darts, down to the colors between the foam and the tips, are literally almost identical. And X Shot could have made these darts any color they wanted. They could have made them, I don't know, blue foam with purple tips or something. Worker Gen 3s have a whole variety of colors. You can get darts with purple foam if you want. But with how long Dart Zone Ruby darts have existed, this just feels extremely cheap. But maybe, you know, the sort of cheap, lazy job of picking the colors for the darts isn't that bad. I mean, it looks like a reasonable design with a hole in it, very similar to the Dart Zone Adventure Force Ember Dart. Maybe these perform just as well as most other half-length darts on the market. I'm here to tell you that the X Shot Pro half-length darts are the worst half-length darts I have ever shot. Like I said, in the opposite corner of this room, I have a Dart Zone Pro Mark IV, and I also have a box full of a hodgepodge of different half-length darts. Whenever I feel like plinking, I will just grab a handful of them, shove them into a magazine one by one, set up my dart catcher, stand about 12 to 24 feet back, and just start blasting. And without fail, at least like 80 or 90% of the time, I can tell when an X Shot Pro dart leaves the barrel of my Dart Zone Pro Mark IV, because it is noticeably less accurate. I can actually see it spiraling as it goes through the air, and sometimes these darts miss my dart catcher completely. And this is at a range of 12 feet. My blaster is pointed right at this dart catcher that's about 1.5 feet wide. At a distance of 12 feet, X Shot darts should have no problem hitting that dart catcher. Why is this a thing? I'd go so far as to bet that a cut down Nerf Elite dart could do better than this. Now, as Dankpods will often say, expectation is the gateway to disappointment. Maybe if the community didn't have such high expectations around this blaster, I would just think of it as being something like, oh, you can get this for like 30 to 35 bucks. Maybe with a little bit of modification, you can make it good. Plunger tube is cracked, no big deal, you can just get a new one. But the expectation that we could see something on store shelves that could actually compete in a space that Dart Zone was dominating, only to have issues with cracked plunger tubes. People in the Nerf Discord have reported broken magazine follower springs, and darts that not only perform worse than the other half-length darts I've tested, but also struggle to even get their own identity from the rest of the competition. To me, it just solidifies the pretense that I've had before I even got my hands on an X Shot blaster, where the things have really nice paint on the outside and then really cheap everything else. And this is honestly such a shame because I thought they were onto something cool. It's a bullpup with pump action slam fire. Have you ever seen that on store shelves outside of the Dart Zone Max Dictator? Which isn't even technically a proper bullpup because of the way the magazine horizontally loads into the stock in kind of a weird way. And this has been kind of a turnoff for a lot of people who have considered this blaster. But while the plunger tube on my X Shot Longshot cracked after I fired what I believe is less than 300 shots, for only about 15 to 20 bucks more, you can get yourself a Dart Zone Max Dictator, which has tougher magazines. I haven't had issues with these breaking. It comes with this cool little flip clip where you can clip two magazines together, flip it around, and you've got double your capacity. The iron sights actually feel like they're worth using, and I've fired hundreds of shots out of this thing without any problems whatsoever. I mean, this is just sad. I really wanted to like this blaster, but after hearing the community-wide reports of all the problems that people were having with their plunger tubes cracking and the darts not performing well, the iron sights are extremely cheap. I think all I can really see this blaster doing from this point onward is collecting dust for the most part. Like, now that my plunger tube is cracked, I am actually almost afraid to load and fire this thing again, lest it causes even more internal damage that I may not see until I undo all these screws and crack this thing open again. So yeah, that is just a video that I wanted to do after talking in the Nerf community Discord about the X Shot Longshot. I didn't even think I was having this problem until I actually took a closer look and saw the crack on my plunger tube that everyone else was reporting. Overall, just something that was hyped beyond belief, and for good reason, because we all thought that a new competitor would be entering the ring. In a hobby that was becoming dominated by Dart Zone, we wanted to see what unique ideas other companies could come up with. And X Shot gave us a really neat looking skin, and then quite frankly, not a whole lot of actual blaster on the inside. I mean, look, they shoved a spring inside the plunger tube for padding in case you happen to dry fire it. Has anyone ever seen that inside a high-powered blaster? I don't think so. I'm rambling at this point. The bottom of the line, save yourself a little bit of extra money and get yourself a Dart Zone Max Dictator instead. It may not have the cool cosmetics, the rear loading mechanism may take a little bit of getting used to, but I'm pretty sure you're gonna get a lot more mileage out of this thing because it's built like a fortress and you get a lot of the same features. Even though this one is more expensive, I just think it's a better value overall. And it comes with darts that don't have a habit of spiraling all over the place. So yeah, that's about it. Let me know what you think. Have you purchased a Dart Zone Max Dictator or an X Shot Longshot Pro? Have you had problems with either of them? Maybe I did something wrong. And also, let me know if you want to see more foam flinging content. I am working on getting a lot more stuff set up in my own time off camera, and if you want me to show that to you guys, I would be glad to. I would just have to find a way to get my VTuber model working with those kinds of setups. But yeah, I suppose that'll be about it. I've been Snake. These have been my opinions on the X Shot Longshot after doing some amount of testing only to see a cracked plunger tube. Thanks for watching, everyone. I will talk to you all later. Oh yeah, a bit of an addendum. Like I said, I talk in a Nerf community Discord a lot, and as far as I'm aware of, X Shot still have yet to respond to anything regarding this issue. Now you could probably say like, oh, you know, they're one of the major blaster brands that puts a lot of stuff on store shelves, cut them some slack. People reported problems with the upcoming Dart Zone Max Omnia Pro and how the flywheels were pretty badly misaligned, leading to inconsistent firing and bad accuracy. And you know what Dart Zone did? They pulled the Omnia Pro off of online retailers' websites, and they're now working to fix the issues and send out a new batch with the problems mitigated. With the Omnia Pro, Dart Zone proved that it can be done. But as far as I've heard from the community, X Shot really haven't addressed this problem. Overall, this just stands as probably one of the most disappointing blaster purchases I've ever made. Maybe I'll try and find a kit with better internals that I can install into it at this point, but I'm already in the middle of modding a Dart Zone Pro Mark IV. All the calculations and physics behind that have been a headache. So yeah, this is probably just gonna sit somewhere with the rest of my blasters and be left to collect dust until I decide to use it again, cracked plunger tube notwithstanding.